What's up, yo? Welcome to the Young Legends podcast, where we teach you the cheat codes of the game of life. I'm your host, Caption, aka Caption Red, and I hope you're doing well and having a happy new year. I'm really grateful that you're listening. Over the holiday break, I really focused in on things that I was grateful for, and my listeners and also the important people in my life were both things that I'm really grateful for. So in 2021, I'm going to continue on this train of gratitude and a train of happiness. Now, I'm going to start with this quote that I really like that goes, "Happiness is a byproduct of a life well lived." What is a byproduct? A byproduct is something that comes as a result of something else. That's what happiness is. You're not trying to pursue happiness, because anytime you try to pursue happiness, you don't get it. But happiness is a byproduct of living a good life. Now, just an FYI, I forgot to mention this in the beginning, but the reason why I am a week late on this podcast is here's what happened. My mic and my backup mic both malfunctioned in the same week. What had happened was, and I know better than to do this, but I've been allowing two of my friends to use my backup microphone, and this past week it turned up broken, and then my regular mic was broken, and I rolled up to record last week, and I had two broken microphones. Now, I should know better than to allow my friends to use my backup microphone, because that's like letting a friend of yours borrow your spare tire, right? If they pop it, guess what? You no longer have a spare tire. So, how do you live a good life? Well, in order to live a good life, you have to make good decisions. And today we're going to focus on two decisions that's going to get your new year started off right. The first one is we're doing an exercise on reviewing this past year. And I know what you're thinking. Looking back at 2020 is like reliving the time your mom embarrassed you in front of your entire middle school. But here's the thing. We're all in the same boat. Even LeBron James looked back on 2020 and was like, man, that year sucked. And that man won an NBA championship, okay? So don't feel like you're alone in this. We're all in the same boat. We're also going to go over how to purge your space and your mind to get yourself ready for 2021. Now, I was going to add a section about goal setting, but I thought that would just be too much for you to take in all at once. So what I'm going to do is I'm dropping this episode as you listen to it, and then I'll give you a week to get these exercises done. And these exercises will take you some time if you do them correctly. So in a week after you get them done, you should be ready for an episode about setting goals. And I'll drop an episode on that topic next week, so keep an eye out for that. So I came up with some questions to review my own personal year, and it was super clarifying on helping me to reflect on this past year, but also to map out the next year. Now, world-class musicians will reflect with each other after every show and also after big tours. Also, professional athletes look at film after every game to see what they did right, to see what they did wrong, and to see how they can improve. But they also reflect on the season at large as well. So if it works for world-class performers, it'll work for you too. Now, this coming year, in order to be more like a professional athlete, I'm going to get my knee drained of fluid every single day. Now, do I have extra fluid in my knee to drain? It doesn't matter. I got to act like the pros, baby. Let's go. These are jokes, of course. Don't try this at home, kids. Now, going into reviewing your year, write down these questions and then write answers to them. What went right? Now, I know what you're thinking. It was 2020, nothing went right. But that's not true. That's not true. Some things went right for you, for me, for everybody. For myself, I had some big projects that I worked on. I worked on this podcast. When I made my list, I even mentioned some stuff that I did with my family as far as travels and other activities. And as I reflected on 2020, a lot went right. And you have to focus on the good. So write down a list of all the good that happened in 2020. Here's the next question. Write down what I learned and write down failures as lessons. Now, the way I used to do this is I wrote down what went wrong. But then I was corrected by somebody and they said, instead of focusing on what went wrong, write down what you learned because every failure is a lesson. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. And that's exactly what failure is, a lesson to learn. Now, as I looked at my list, I said, yes, there were a lot of things that went wrong, even with this podcast. And it's important to write these things down so that you don't make the same mistakes again. Here was my third question. Times I felt most alive. What are the times in 2020 that you felt most alive? For me, myself, traveling made it on my list. Traveling safely, of course. And a few other things I wrote down. And you need to ask yourself that question too. What are the times in 2020 that I felt most alive? And whatever makes it on the list, do more of that. Next question. Times I felt least alive. Write down all the times you felt least alive in 2020 and do less of that. Next question. What were my stumbling blocks to success? We all have stumbling blocks. For me, social media is one of them. And I know that we are in a pandemic, but as I look back on my year, I still could have spent more time doing other things and less time on social media. So go ahead and ask yourself that question too. What were your stumbling blocks to success? Next question. What would I do if I could do the year over? Now, me, myself, I would have bought some stock in Charmin and Bounty paper products in the month of January because, good gosh, they move product like they probably never have. Now, what would you do if you could do the year over? This is a good question to ask about your life in general. This is one of the questions I ask often to help get me towards the things that I need to be doing. So ask yourself that question. What would I do differently if I could do 2020 over? Now, the next two questions I didn't come up with, but they're really good questions. First question is, what am I willing to let go of? Now, that could be false beliefs you have about life, about the world at large, about yourself. It could be self-imposed limitations. It could be a grudge that you've been carrying that you need to let go. But in this coming year, ask yourself the question, what am I willing to let go of? Next question, what am I willing to include that I was timid on previously? So these are things that you were afraid of, things that you thought were a big deal, but really aren't. What are you willing to include now that you were timid on previously? Next question, how will I control for COVID? Now, this is a question that was brought up in a Facebook group that I'm a part of. And here's reality. COVID has thrown off everything. So, how will you control for COVID? For myself, when I did this exercise, I wrote down, spend more time planning and backup planning. That was one of my first things. And another thing I wrote down was, get vaccinated so I can go do more stuff. Next question, what will I do this year to have a different year? For me, myself, it was getting offline, particularly when it comes to social media. Now, here's what you need to understand about social media. The house always wins. Whether it's casinos, banks, credit card companies, social media companies, the house always wins. What I mean by that is you need to understand that they have the smartest people in the world working to get your money and to get your attention. And the best way for you not to lose your money and to lose your attention is to stay away from the house. Okay, so you're like, well, how do I do this? And I ask myself that same question, how do I do this? Well, when it comes to social media, I do have an Instagram for the podcast, but I've decided I need to stay off my personal one. And I also need to unfollow people that will distract me. Now, with Facebook, I have a second account with not that many friends on it. I made it for the former students that I had at a school that I was working at back in the day in order to keep in touch with them. So what I'll do is I'll use that one to post questions about podcasting, post questions about finances, post questions about information that's really important to me. And yes, I know this is not a perfect solution, but almost all the time there is no perfect solution, but it is a pretty good one. So what you and I need to do is figure out workarounds to keep ourselves productive and also to keep ourselves sane. Now, speaking of bad habits, if you have any habits that you want to break, I recommend 2 things. Number 1, finding other activities that will replace those habits. Because it's not about stopping doing something, it's about doing something else in its place. And my other suggestion is to listen to my episodes about breaking bad habits, where I share a ton of tips from the minds of experts, and I'll make sure to tag those in the show notes. All right, so we've covered reviewing your year. The next thing I highly recommend is to organize, clean, and purge. Now, here's what I did on New Year's Eve. I cleaned my house for 6 hours. I was powering through. I was organizing. I was tossing stuff. I cleaned up the laundry area, the cupboards, my room. I dusted, and I found a bunch of stuff, actually, as I was cleaning, and that's what happens. If you want to find what you've lost, just clean. Things just magically turn up, and that's what I did on New Year's Eve, and I did go and be social afterwards, but that was like 6 hours of my day. Now, the feeling I felt after I was done cleaning was amazing. I felt so good, and I highly recommend that you get your area cleaned up, that you throw stuff away, that you give stuff away, or that you sell it. Because your personal environment has a significant impact on your mental health. So work on your environment. There's a self-improvement guru that I follow, and he says, beautify the space you spend the most time in, beautify one room in your house, and if you share that space with someone else, make sure you get the okay from whoever else uses that space, but make your area beautiful. It'll feel good when you are in it. Now, speaking of taking care of your personal space, last week when I was recording, I recorded in my basement. My basement was a bit of a wreck. It was the one part of the house that didn't get touched because I didn't have enough time. And part of the reason why my basement was a wreck is because I allow some friends to store stuff down here, but 80% of it is really me. And the reason why my basement gets all crazy is I'm only down here once every 2 weeks when I'm recording. But as I was down here recording, I really felt it. I really felt just kind of the negative energy of being in a space that was so cluttered and messy and disorganized. And it really didn't feel good to be down here. But just the other day, I actually did clean up my basement. It's about 90% done. And it feels so much better to be down here. So clean your space, purge, organize, and you will feel much better. Now, speaking of purging, don't just purge your physical space and your objects, but purge negative content that comes into your head as well. Whether it's through your email, through your search engine, through your TV, on social media, unfollow people, or at least mute them. And you can do this on every single social media network. But purge that negative content, because here's the thing, garbage in, garbage out. You can't have a positive life with negative inputs. You can't watch the Kardashian show and have intelligent thoughts. Now, that's kind of a joke, and it's kind of not. But you have to safeguard your mind and make sure that negative stuff doesn't flow into it. And me, myself, because I want to stay positive, I'm very mindful of the stuff I watch, the music I listen to, the people I hang around, and the environments that I go into. So, in 2020, there are going to be some things that you're going to need to cut out of your life if you want to have it to be a great year. Beyond that, try to declutter digitally, organize the home screen on your computer, delete apps off of your phone that you're no longer using. And if you do this, you're going to feel so much better afterwards. One last thing I read in an article was eliminate micro distractions. And the main one they referenced was turning off your notifications. You don't need to be notified every single time you get a comment or a like or an email or anything of that sort. And yes, phone calls and text messages can be very important usually. But all that other stuff, is not worthy of your attention to be distracted by all the time. So in review your year, look at what worked, look at what didn't, ask yourself those questions, and ask yourself, how are you going to make this year different? Also, clean and purge. Get rid of unnecessary possessions, organize the rest of your possessions, and clean up your space. And also, get rid of all the stuff that enters your brain that doesn't add value to your life. Now, we're almost done with the episode. One thing I'm going to experiment with in 2021 is doing some freestyle rapping at the end of my solo episodes. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up with some bars. All right, here we go. Words in the back. I'm serving these raps, trying to stay intact. Coming with a microphone, year in review. Something that's true, you gotta understand. Happiness is not something you could grab. It's a byproduct of a life well lived. And that's what I say when I don't fib. Spitting freestyles, talking about looking in the rear view, so you could have a clear view up in your life. I'm busting on mics, talking about things that we need to understand. How the year went good and bad. What were the good things, times that you had? What went right when I'm here up on the mic? What did I learn as a lesson? Don't be stressing, don't be second guessing. Understand what you went through will shape you. It will take you to the next level. And that's what I say, I just survived. Yo, I come through when I felt was alive. I'm asking myself that question. And also when I was dead, spit a freestyle off the top of the head. Never gonna stop, got stumbling blocks. I get humbled a lot, so I need to understand how I need to avoid them. Don't enjoy them. Opposite of that, what would you do? Kinda like John Quinones said, if you could have the year over, it's clear that it's colder, but we need to understand how we just grow. And that's what I say when I'm up in the flow. What you let go of, like a frozen song. Spitting freestyles and I do it all day long. What you willing to include, here up in the mood. Spitting freestyles, and that's how we do. How we gon' know it, control the COVID. That's what I'm saying, we just rolling. What will I do this freaking year to have a different year? Make things appear, that's what I'm asking myself on the mic. Social media, it is just a feeding ya. Maybe that, come through with them raps. Talk about things that you need to get out of your life. When I'm here up on the mic and I'm nice, spitting things, here up on the scene. Organize and clean and just straight purge. And that's what I say with these words. Find what you lost just by cleaning. Coming with a microphone, yo, I'm just seeing a better year. That's what I'm saying. And yo, I just stay, give it away. That's what you gotta do with the things that are possessing you and you ain't possessing them. Yo, I come through, I'm confessing, son. I got an environment, I need to be inspired with that thing that I got around me. And that's what I say, what you can surround me with is good thoughts, person negativity. And that's what I say with these words I'm flipping. See, I talk about garbage in and out. Come with a microphone, yo, I just shout it on out like I'm taking out a stain. Spitting freestyles off the top of the brain. Declutter physically, digitally, every single way that I'm coming through, I'm differently living this year, way different. And that's what I say with these words that I'm kicking. I spit off the top, and that's how I go. And that's what I said with a 2020 flow. All right, so that's it. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a lot from it. And I hope it helps you get off to a great start this year. Now, if you're enjoying this podcast, please share it with a friend that you feel like needs to listen to it. And please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you need anything. I love interacting with y'all. I'll make sure to put my email and my Instagram in the show notes. And with that, we are wrapped up for this episode. Have a fantastic week. And until next time, peace. Bye, young legend.